Why are people becoming homeless? What do we need to do to change that? And what do we need to do to help end people's homelessness more quickly?
The number one cause of death for homeless Utahns is a fatal drug overdose. And so this is something we can't ignore.
When you look at a person like this, if you were to get them mental health support, there's still so much unaddressed. If you were to get them addiction support, there's still so much unaddressed.
Hey, it's Julie, and this is Top of Mind, where we tackle tough topics with nuance and an open mind. We're out to become better citizens, kinder neighbors, and more effective advocates. Homelessness is a problem in nearly every U.S. city, and it's getting worse. Last year, the number of people experiencing homelessness in America hit an all-time high. And that is despite billions of dollars spent over the last 2 decades toward a national plan to end homelessness, which was launched by the George W. Bush administration. It was built around a concept called housing first. Salt Lake City was one of the first in the country to go all in on the approach in the early 2000s. And by 2015, Utah had cut its number of chronically homeless residents from 2,000 down to just 200. That's a 90% drop. It captured national headlines and even got featured on The Daily Show with Jon Stewart.
Nobody likes homelessness. I'm very controversial. Least of all the homeless. But what can be done? Salt Lake City, Utah has a plan that will blow your mind.
We did it by giving homes to homeless people.
You did what?
So that was 2015. Now, fast forward 10 years, chronic homelessness has trended in the opposite direction. It's up to about 1,200 individuals in Utah today. Other big cities have fared much worse, and now the approach underpinning the nation's efforts is under fire.
The Housing First idea, has that been a success or a failure? Epic failure. Epic.
Dave DeRocher runs a program in Utah with a very different approach to addressing homelessness that we'll hear more about later. But I've been following the progress of Housing First since it first took root in the United States. I was a public radio reporter in Salt Lake City, and I covered the opening of the state's very first apartment building. This was in 2007, designed specifically to provide permanent supportive housing to chronically homeless individuals. That's a key tenet of the Housing First model. Sunrise Metro is tucked near a freeway exit in downtown Salt Lake City. It has 100 studio apartments. Residents pay 30% of their income, if they have any income, and there's no requirement to be sober or to have a job. The whole point of Housing First is to give somebody a safe, stable place to live and access to support from caseworkers so they can begin to address whatever made staying housed so hard in the first place, like addiction or mental illness or trauma. It is hard to overstate how radical this idea seemed at the time. And I remember meeting Johnny on opening day at Sunrise Metro. He'd been living on the streets for years, he said. And I asked him what he liked most about his brand new apartment, thinking he'd say something like, the bed or the roof. It was the shower. And nearly 20 years on, I recently went back to Sunrise Metro to talk to residents. And guess what they kept saying was the best part of living there?
Yeah, the shower is really a blessing.
Greg is 69. He's been in his Sunrise Metro apartment for 10 years. He pays a third of his Social Security check in rent.
I think it's been like one of the most peaceful time of my life that I had.
Living here has been one of the most peaceful times of your life.
Yes, it has.
Why?
I don't know, it's relaxing, and I've been laying back sleeping a whole lot. It's warm, and it's really been nice. I'll try to stay here long.
You're here for good.
Oh, yeah.
And he can be. Permanent supportive housing really is permanent. Now, when Sunrise Metro first opened 20 years ago, it wasn't clear if people would really stay forever, because in theory, they'd get their lives back on track and then move out into broader society. But the high cost of housing, coupled with the significant need for medical and mental health support among the city's chronically homeless, has led to many staying long-term. So Utah kept building to meet the demand. Today, there are more than 3,000 permanent supportive housing units in the state. And yet, street homelessness keeps rising. So has Housing First run its course? Well, that's the question policymakers in Utah are now asking themselves. And every big city in the country is watching to see what comes next. Can one of the biggest homelessness success stories of the last 20 years crack the code a second time? That's today on Top of Mind. It's a little strange, isn't it, that one of the most politically conservative states in the whole country was so early to embrace providing free housing to homeless individuals. How did that happen?
I think there's a few reasons, and a big one is a gentleman named Lloyd Pendleton.
Michelle Flynn is the executive director of the Road Home, which is one of the longest-running homeless service agencies in Utah. They run shelters, do outreach, and operate several permanent supportive housing complexes. Flynn met Lloyd Pendleton in 2003 when he was on assignment by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints to work with the Road Home's main homeless shelter.
And just help the organization at that time with their strategic vision and financial planning and all of those things. And he got to learn a lot about homelessness.
And because the church has a big influence on policy in Utah, state leaders listened to Pendleton when he started asking some pointed questions.
Why are people becoming homeless? What do we need to do to change that? And what do we need to do to help end people's homelessness more quickly?
What was going on with homelessness in Utah at the time?
I think for a long time, we had one facility that was served as the main shelter for the city, for the county. The significant number of people that came through the homelessness system stayed a short time, got a little bit of help that they needed, and moved on and were never seen again. But there was this much smaller cohort of people who were just sticking around and cycling in and out.
And this small group of frequent flyers were really expensive to serve in this way. The U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development estimated that a chronically homeless individual costs upwards of $50,000 per year when you add up all the shelter and soup kitchen services, plus hospital stays and jail time. Giving somebody a free apartment would actually be cheaper. Utah could save up to $23,000 per person per year, according to various estimates. And that is what sold Utah's conservative lawmakers on Housing First. So the state adopted its own 10-year plan to end homelessness. And soon, permanent supportive housing complexes were popping up, and the number of chronically homeless people in shelters and on the street dwindled, recalls Michelle Flynn.
And then the state was like, great, we did all this cool stuff. Now let's focus on something else. And while the population continued to grow, for a long time, there was not very much investment at all in supportive housing. We're at the Magnolia.
I asked Flynn for a tour of the Road Home's newest permanent supportive housing project. The Magnolia Apartments opened in August 2021.
We have 65 units for single individuals, so men or women who qualify as chronically homeless are able to come in and live here.
The Magnolia was designed specifically to house folks who've been homeless for the longest time and have the most complex needs in the community. It's a 5-story building in downtown Salt Lake City.
The lobby opens right up out here onto 300 East. We always have staff here at the front desk who get to know who all the residents are.
It's a secure building, and staff are on site 24/7.
Visitors do check in, and we take their names so we know who's in the building, we know who's around, and then if there's anything that happens in the building, we know who's here, and we can follow up.
The main floor has a common area, meeting rooms, and staff offices. As we made our way to the elevator, residents were coming in and out, many of them in wheelchairs, often with emotional support and service animals in tow.
This is my little doggy.
Yes.
He's a good boy.
He's a good boy.
The Magnolia was built with accessibility in mind because 1 in 7 people experiencing homelessness in Utah has a physical disability. 1 in 3 has a mental illness. Almost half have a substance use disorder. We hopped in an elevator to look inside an empty apartment on the 3rd floor.
There are studio apartments, all the furniture, a lot of the desk and the closets and all those are built in.
It's bare bones, but functional, kind of like a very basic dorm room with a kitchen and small bathroom.
We took care to have really sturdy things built in here because people who have gone through a lot of trauma often react in different ways that can be harder on the facility. And so we want to make sure it's really strong. Well, people who have a history of trauma tend to react very strongly to situations in a different way than you and I might. Built up frustrations of being turned down or being told to wait in line or go from here to here to here and not getting the help they need. So if there's immediately something that they're frustrated, they might act out very quickly, and we want to make sure that the chairs aren't getting broken, that they're as strong as they can be, but also comfortable and welcoming.
Now, over the years, critics of Housing First have pointed to outbursts and occasional calls for police at permanent supportive housing buildings like the Magnolia as evidence that a no-strings-attached approach just doesn't work. But Flynn says that's a misconception.
It's not free housing with no strings attached. That is absolutely not what this program is. It is subsidized housing where people pay 30% of their income towards the rent. We have a lease with expectations that people must follow, and we evict people. I don't like to evict people because we know they're coming right back to our shelters, and we'll continue to work with them there or back out to the streets into a worse situation, but we need to keep the building safe. So in order to get into the Magnolia, you have to put in an application at Salt Lake City Housing Authority. They have a couple of criteria that includes starting fires and history of meth production, things that are pretty major that they screen out for safety in the building. They're not allowed to have illegal drugs and do illegal activity inside Magnolia. But if they have an addiction disorder and they come in and they're high, as long as they're not causing problems. So the issue for us mainly is safety of the building.
And so how do you manage the risk of overdose? If it could happen, they could consume fentanyl, not knowing the level that they've received, and then maybe die in their apartment.
Fentanyl is a huge crisis across this entire country and throughout every neighborhood in Salt Lake City and Salt Lake County in the state of Utah. So just as we might have people here with addictions, perhaps to fentanyl when they come into the facility, it's the same thing in any apartment community in the city, any high school in our state. It's a huge issue that our country needs to do a better job addressing because it's so easily accessible and so inexpensive, particularly vulnerable when you've been through a lot of trauma, when you're suffering from mental illness, to turn to drugs as a kind of a relief. So having our experienced case management team on site here, having 24/7 people at the front desk, just make sure we have an eye on everybody and just make sure that we're there and we're watching and we're addressing it.
I was hoping to speak with a resident of the Magnolia, but Flynn and her staff said they couldn't arrange that for privacy reasons. So I went back across town to another complex called Pamela's Place. It opened a year before the Magnolia. It's right across the street, actually, from Sunrise Metro, and it's run by the Salt Lake City Housing Authority. There's a concrete ledge in the shade at Pamela's Place right next to the driveway where tenants hang out to smoke and socialize. And that's where I met a middle-aged guy with a cane and a friendly smile who seemed to know everyone coming and going.
My name's Julie.
Hi, Julie.
Hey there.
Angel.
Angel, okay. How long have you lived here?
4 years. And I love it.
Angel spent 20 years as a mover in California, but then he injured his back and work got scarce. So about 5 years ago, he caught a bus to join a friend in Nebraska, got off in Salt Lake City, and decided to stick around.
I slept at the bus station for 2 days, and then I got used to the place, fell in love with it, and then I started staying at the bed bug rescue mission.
He got a job hauling trash, but it wasn't enough to save up for the first and last month's rent if he could even pass the credit check to get his own place. So he kept staying at the shelter, and he says he prayed for a break.
I said, God, please, give me housing. And then a couple days later, 2 caseworkers brought me here, showed me a couple of apartments. I picked one, and then 2 days later, I was in. So I'm blessed.
How long do you think you'll be here?
I don't know, maybe till I die.
Like you could see this like being permanent for you?
Yeah, some of my neighbors have died, so yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
From health complications mostly, he says, but also drug overdoses. Angel says drugs and alcohol were a problem for him in the past, but not by the time he moved into Pamela's Place. Now, since sobriety isn't a requirement for residents, he says things can get a little dicey.
We have had 3 meth labs here. And there are people who are violent, who have committed violence and that are still here. Yeah.
Do you think it should be sober living? Would that be better?
No, I think we need to change management and improve.
Enforce the rules a little bit more?
Yeah, because he's a little too slack for me.
We weren't able to get in touch with anyone with the Salt Lake City Housing Authority, but a legislative audit of Utah's homeless services system from 2018, which was a few years before Pamela's Place and the Magnolia opened up, highlighted safety and security concerns at permanent supportive housing units and called for more active and engaged management. Over at the Magnolia, Michelle Flynn acknowledged that being the place where other homeless service providers send their most challenging cases has been a learning curve.
When we opened this facility, It didn't take long for us to recognize that the severity of need was much higher than in our prior programs that we had opened, and it was coming out of the pandemic.
Just kind of a lot of disruption,
which I think again we've seen across the community, not just in the homelessness population, but the level of need was higher than we had staffed here at this facility. Absolutely, we identified that, and so we reached out to our close partners who were experts in this work, who are treatment providers, and that was really the answer: is to bring the services here on site.
She's describing a pilot program that's been underway at the Magnolia for about a year and a half now. Traditionally, Flynn says each resident in permanent supportive housing would have a caseworker who tries to connect them to services in the community, like addiction treatment or psychiatrist visits. But
I had seen this team get frustrated over and over again, trying to connect someone to one of our great partners, but getting them to that location, having them show up in that location, them getting frustrated because their appointment was late, and maybe having a blow up at the counter and then getting dropped from that caseload. And here, our team here is starting all over again, trying to get them engaged somewhere else. That's one of the pieces that's so crucial about this program, is that they operate out of this building.
It was trickier than you might think to get psychiatrists and therapists to come diagnose and treat patients right at the Magnolia, because Medicaid requires an intensive assessment, diagnosis, and treatment plan to be in place for someone before reimbursements kick in.
So when we tried to invite our partners here, they wanted to come and help, but they couldn't pay their staff to come here and do that because those things weren't in place. So we are funding this pilot right now completely out of private money.
It's been a game changer. I really can't explain how much better just the health of the building has been this last year overall.
This is Tyler Greer. He's the services manager at the Magnolia.
Just less crisis moments, less moments where my case management team has to get in and de-escalate, because these clients are medicated, they're getting the treatment they need, they're getting their meds, just everything.
Interesting. I'd love to get your response to some of the criticism that says, we've been investing in this housing first thing all this time, and yet I don't even want to take my family downtown because, people are doing drugs visibly, and there's, clearly housing first has failed. It doesn't work because, look, there's still all of this visible, problematic homelessness and criminal element.
Well, I don't know anybody in the places I work that say permanent supportive housing is a solution on its own. It's not the solution on its own. It's definitely a solution for the population we've been talking about. But as you said, we've seen this increase in unsheltered homelessness across our nation. It's happening because housing prices have skyrocketed. We have to have places for people to live where they're not worried that they're going to get evicted each month because they can't pay the rent. We have to help them increase their income. We need all those pieces to come together. Like I said, at the legislature and to the State Homeless Services Committee in their public meetings, we need all of it. Absolutely, fund more sober housing. We need people who are coming out of treatment to be able to live in a place where they're not surrounded by the thing that took them down in the first place. These programs are also successful and needed because these folks aren't working in those programs. So we're going to continue to provide supportive housing. I just want to emphasize something. I think when we had great success in the past and the successes that we're seeing now, it's because we are actually truly partnering. Collaborating, but truly partnering. We're coming together. These systems of mental health care, substance use care, and homelessness can't be isolated from each other. They have to come together. And so I feel like when we can all come together and really identify the goals we have in common, and we do have all those goals in common, then we can come up with the solutions because we've seen it happen. And so let's do it again.
Michelle Flynn is executive director of The Road Home, which runs Salt Lake City's main homeless shelters and manages 3 permanent supportive housing complexes. Now, she mentioned testifying at the legislature. In the last couple of years, she's had a lot of opportunity for that. Utah lawmakers have passed a slate of bills aimed at camping and drug use among the homeless population.
None of the bills that I worked on this year, none of them enhanced penalties or were more draconian in nature, but rather trying to find a connection between pressure and services. There's even a saying in the recovery community that jail saved my life.
Meet the state lawmaker leading Utah's shift away from housing first. Next on Top of Mind from the BYU Radio Podcast Network, I'm Julie Rose. Hey, it's Julie. There is another podcast I think you're going to like from the BYU Radio family of podcasts, so I wanted to pass along the word. It's called In Good Faith. Join host Stephen Perry as he connects with believers from various religions, Christians, Buddhists, Jews, Muslims, and much, much more. Listening to their captivating stories is an opportunity to deepen our own understanding of faith, religion, and spirituality. Plus, Stephen is really well-traveled, and his global perspective brings a unique richness to each conversation. Elevate your appreciation for the divine with In Good Faith. It's an inspiring journey of unity and enlightenment. Listen anywhere you get podcasts. To understand why 28-year-old State Representative Tyler Clancy is the Republican Party's go-to guy on changing up Utah's approach to homelessness, it helps to know that he's a cop.
I serve as a detective with the Provo City Police Department. If you're a first responder in the 21st century, you will be interacting with people experiencing addiction daily. And it's shocking. I've been to calls with overdoses. I've been in calls of child endangerment where children are living in a home where there's drugs being smoked right in front of them.
It's not that everyone experiencing homelessness is addicted to drugs, says Clancy. But among the chronically homeless, the highly visible individuals on the street causing so much angst for city leaders, drugs are a major factor. And the drugs have changed in ways that require a more aggressive response, says Clancy.
For a long time, methamphetamine was looked at as like a party drug, and it was very dangerous. Now, emergency room doctors, nurses, social workers, and these first responders are starting to say, I cannot tell the difference between someone having a psychotic episode associated with something like schizophrenia and someone high on meth. Okay. And it's creating violence, it's creating all of these different challenges, and there's no medical treatment right now.
And fentanyl used to be something dealers added to other drugs to boost the potency.
Now the game has changed so much that people are seeking fentanyl. They don't want anything other than the strongest, most potent substance on the street. The average user is 6 to 8 times a day is how many times they use fentanyl. So I think the intensity of these addictions, these particular substances, is what's driving people, ruining relationships, ruining families, ruining lives, not just missing rent payments, but fracturing these relationships that leave people out on the street.
So, giving someone a free place to live without first requiring them to get sober no longer makes as much sense as it might have, says Clancy.
You can't tell someone in the thralls of a methamphetamine addiction, will you please come to this class, and assume that they're going to engage in this program. And so what we've tried to do here in Utah is, rather than a full elimination of any one of these programs, we want to allow providers more flexibility to say, we've seen success when we do put some of these requirements on individuals joining into these programs. Let's say you have a permanent supportive housing complex, and let's say 75% of people are on kind of that path of recovery. Well, is it fair to that person that's working tooth and nail to get clean and sober to not address someone openly using drugs in the apartment next door? We know that that's not going to be a recipe for success for recovery. So right now, we want to allow those providers to be more creative, to be more flexible, to say, if you're seeing that there's something that works, we're going to support you in that.
To that end, Clancy sponsored a resolution that passed the Utah legislature nearly unanimously, calling on the federal government to let the state use Housing First funds for places that require sobriety.
I think when you talk about the shift away from Housing First, it's less about a philosophical difference of this works, this doesn't, and just accepting a broader continuum. What we don't want to do is accept a one-size-fits-all.
A couple of the bills that you ran this year that passed with overwhelming support do seem to be a little more focused on the cracking down on drug use and sort of like forcing people to go to drug court to get into treatment. So what would happen in your ideal scenario if the police get called, you get called to respond to an individual who is unsheltered, there's public nuisance, they're behaving erratically, and they're clearly on some kind of a substance, right? What has been happening, and how would you like to see that response be different?
So none of the bills that I referenced that I worked on this year, none of them enhanced penalties or were more draconian in nature, but rather trying to find a connection between pressure and services. And so I'll give you an example. We, as first responders, police, EMT, and fire, you're going to be the first one usually on scene for a drug overdose, usually from opioids. We have amazing life-saving technologies in medicine called naloxone or Narcan, and we can literally save people's lives. But talk to any first responder, and the most heartbreaking thing is when you save someone's life and they walk away, and you say, good luck. What we did in the House Bill 199, one of the ones that you referenced, is now we're building a connection to treatment on demand in that moment.
Okay.
And so without changing the Good Samaritan law, because we still want people to call 911, first responders are now going to be equipped, partnering with the public health departments in their county or political subdivision. When they respond to an overdose, they're going to be able to put someone on the phone in real time with an addiction provider and be able to transport them with no cost. We're trying to find these innovative ways where naturally the system is going to interact with people experiencing addiction. How do we balance that pressure without putting what I call the scarlet F for a felony on someone's record? But I think what we need to do is raise the standard and to say, as much as we recognize that you're dealing with all of these different challenges, you can't smoke fentanyl at a public park, or you can't inject methamphetamine on the side of the road next to a restaurant. It's all a Class A misdemeanor.
And the intensive program involves pressure, which frankly looks like forcing people into treatment.
In some cases, certainly.
Or sending them to jail.
I think even the knowledge that that's an option, that that's on the table, I think is kind of what you talked about, is that pressure. I think that's a piece of the puzzle. And right now, the reason that I say that is not because I don't care about people who are experiencing this.
Because it sounds a little inhumane.
It's certainly, I think from a 1,000 feet up, we say, well, we need to force people into treatment, or you go to jail if you don't do what we like. That can sound pretty inhumane, is a great word. But I also think when you look at what life is like on the street, when you look at some of these stories of people who have overdosed, and you go, oh my gosh, this person overdosed 7 times before it was fatal. They went through 11 programs that didn't work. They did this, they did this. I wish we got them into something, and maybe that's the only thing it takes. There's even a saying in the recovery community that jail saved my life. And many times, a meaningful 30-day preparation to get someone ready for drug court can get people off those drugs. It would be amazing if any of the informal pressure, any of that family, friends, social work, anything. I look at this as the last resort. This is really like the end, not the beginning. One thing that I've been very heartened about is that this really hasn't been a partisan issue too much in Utah. All of these reforms or tweaks or really hard changes to the system we've made have been, overwhelmingly supported across the aisle.
Tyler Clancy is a Provo City police detective and represents House District 60 in the Utah legislature. He often mentions a particular success story to illustrate the need for a shift in approach. So we called her up.
My name is Amy Daschel. I am the Director of Business Development, Clinical Intake and Harm Reduction for Odyssey House.
Odyssey House is one of the main providers of substance use treatment in Salt Lake City, both in residential and outpatient settings. 8 years ago, Daschel was arrested in a massive law enforcement homeless sweep by the Salt Lake City Police Department. It was called Operation Rio Grande.
They arrested thousands of people that day, and it was my final arrest.
A couple of years earlier, in 2015, Daschel had become addicted to opioids. It started with a prescription to OxyContin after a series of 12 foot surgeries and was compounded by a cascade of personal tragedies.
My mother committed suicide. My ex-husband it was domestic violence. We were going through a divorce, and he had absconded with my kids out of state. So all of this happened at once, and I just broke. So I started using this OxyContin to treat my emotional pain.
Within 2 months, she was homeless.
I lived literally on the street in Salt Lake on Rio Grande Street.
That's where the main homeless shelter was at the time, along with a lot of street camping and public drug use. Over the next 2 years, Daschel went to jail 6 times.
I did 267 days on misdemeanor charges.
And so each of those times you would detox probably for a period of time. And then you just come right back out to this and head right back down to Rio Grande?
Immediately right back, because that's all I knew, right?
What would have happened, do you think, if you had been offered one of these permanent supportive, a place at Sunrise Metro or Pamela's place, right? Like if they had said, Amy, we can get you, we're going to give you a place, a safe place to live. It's free. You don't have to be sober. And then we're going to help you figure out how to deal with this.
It wouldn't have worked for me. I can tell you right now, as deep as I was in that addiction and as dark as it was, the only thing that mattered in those moments was for me to not feel. Okay, great. Now I have a warm place to use.
Her 7th arrest came in 2017. Daschle says she had asked for treatment when she'd been arrested previously, but there had never been space. This time was different, though, because Operation Rio Grande had received funding to offer drug treatment to everybody they arrested.
They had everybody centralized within the jail to provide access for people to actually get into treatment, and I almost didn't take it. They called me, and we go into this room, and it's everybody in this room, and I'm just thinking, what? Great, my 7th time in jail, and they were going to tell me, they're like, we're going to give you treatment, and I'm like, why now? And my distrust in the system was so strong by this point, after begging for help and just being pushed aside, that it was hard for me to believe that this was actually going to be something real for me. But I decided to take the help, and they offered me a treatment. So I went into House of Hope. I took the last bed of House of Hope, which is an all-female program.
She spent 4 months in a residential treatment program and then transitioned to a sober living group home for 2 months, again facilitated by funding from Operation Rio Grande. And then she got a voucher for subsidized housing and started working in the recovery community, got her master's in social work, and today she's the director of outreach and clinical intake for Odyssey House.
I don't think I ever would have gotten sober if I didn't go through that residential program and then stayed connected to our recovery community. It was essential for me.
Amy Daschle, thank you very much for your time today. I really appreciate this.
Yes, you're welcome.
The 4 months that Daschle spent in residential treatment is on the longer side. Typically, a drug rehab stay is 30, 60, or 90 days, often driven by how much insurance will cover or a person can come up with out of pocket. But the organization many reformers in Utah are pointing to lately as the gold standard for helping people trapped in homelessness and addiction is much longer. The Other Side Academy requires 2.5 years living on site with almost no family contact, but lots of hard work and tough talk.
My peers told me the truth about myself. No therapists, no doctors. It was people with lived experience told me who I'd become in my life, and then they showed me the way.
That's coming up. I'm Julie Rose. This is Top of Mind from the BYU Radio Podcast Network. There is a new podcast out now called Constant Wonder Kids. It's an adaptation of the Signal award-winning podcast Constant Wonder. And this Constant Wonder Kids version curates stories from Constant Wonder into little adventures for your little explorers. Everyday moments become extraordinary nature explorations as they dive deep into the ocean with whale sharks or cheer for tiny athletes at the Hedgehog Olympics. It's perfect for when your brain's got an itch that needs to be scratched. You can listen to Constant Wonder Kids on the BYU Radio app or wherever you get your podcasts. The Other Side Academy did not start as a program for homeless individuals. The focus was, and still is actually, to help people with criminal histories and addiction to turn their lives around. Most participants are referred by a judge as an alternative to jail or prison, but homelessness is often part of the story.
I was homeless on the streets of LA and Las Vegas, primarily LA.
This is Jared Campbell.
I'm 50 years old. I am a graduate of the Other Side Academy, but I've chose to stay on as a student, and I'm in my 4th year. I struggled with addiction throughout my life, but there was an event that took place. I came home and I had found my wife had committed suicide. And I used that as an excuse to, instead of doing the right thing and be there for my kids, I actually left. I gave away my home. I drove to Las Vegas and signed the title of my car away. And that night I slept on Fremont Street.
He spent nearly 2 years living on the street and stealing cars. By the time he landed in jail back in Utah, where he's originally from, he had 5 grand theft auto charges.
I had been in jail for about 30 days when I found a flyer for the Other Side Academy.
Now, to get into the Other Side Academy, you have to write a letter about what you've done and why you're ready to change.
I didn't have any stationery to write, so I literally wrote my letter on a postcard and I went through an interview process.
He got accepted, and a judge agreed to let him transfer to the Other Side Academy on condition that he stay for the whole program, or he'd have to come back and do the rest of his sentence. That's a pretty typical arrangement. The Other Side Academy requires a minimum of 30 months. Participants, which they call students, live in dorms and have almost no contact with anyone from their former lives. They participate in group meetings led by their peers. There are no therapists or doctors. Sobriety is mandatory.
Once I got to the academy, I wasn't even allowed to talk about drugs. It's something that we leave at the door. And so it was never on the forefront of my mind. So drugs were never the issue after I got here. I never wanted to leave to go use.
Everyone at the Other Side Academy is expected to work full-time in one of the organization's social enterprises. There's a moving company, a construction business, and a thrift store.
I spent 3 months in the kitchen, and then I was called off as a sophomore to corporate development. So I reached out for in-kind donations.
Then he transitioned to grant writing. Students can opt to stay beyond the minimum 2.5 years if they want. Campbell has opted to stay on for nearly 4 years, serving as a mentor to other students.
I would say I'm still here. And first and foremost is a gift to my parents. Never have I made a decision to benefit someone else. It's always been selfish. But despite my parents' best efforts and everything they've done to try to help me, they've never been able to. It was a decision I had to make on my own. And now that I finally have, I want to give back to my parents, and so they deserve the peace of mind that they have for me being here. And I've stayed because I realized in my 17th month at the academy that I was liking the person that I was becoming. And I want this to stick.
Jared Campbell is now reestablishing contact with his parents and his children. Soon he'll transition to a job in the community. The Other Side Academy arranges job placements for 100% of its graduates. I spent some time with the Other Side Academy's executive director, Dave DeRocher, trying to understand how it's different from other reentry or rehabilitation programs.
Tell the truth, hold people accountable. You see something, you say something. We call it 200% accountability. Julie, we've been open since 2015. Every single student here is on AP&P. That's adult parole and probation. We have never given a dirty drug test to adult parole and probation. There's never been an act of violence nor a threat of violence.
It works because they don't mince words, says DeRocher. Years ago, he graduated from a California program called Delancey Street that inspired the Other Side Academy.
We're afraid to be honest with people today. We're afraid to tell people the truth and call them on their behaviors. I was a drug addict for 27 years. I was a hardcore dope fiend, intravenous drug user. Because of the choices I was making in my life, I did a 2-year prison term, a 5-year prison term, a 6-year prison term, and a 10-year prison term. Back to back to back to back, right? Drugs weren't my problem. My behaviors were my problem. When I got to Delancey Street, I had a 22-year prison sentence suspended over my head. That anchored me there. I knew if I split, the judge was serious. That was enough, and then my peers did the magic. My peers told me the truth about myself. No therapists, no doctors. It was people with lived experience that sat me down and told me who I'd become in my life, the impact my decisions in my life were having. But we live in this world where we're so damn afraid to hurt people's feelings that we don't want to tell them the truth. We wonder why the overdose rate is so high.
So what is the therapeutic piece here? You don't have therapists? You don't have group therapy? You don't have doctors on site?
Therapy. Tuesday nights and Friday nights, we have breakthrough groups where the students give each other feedback. The reason why there's no drugs in the facilities because we all live here together. We all love each other enough to tell each other the truth. So you could talk to anybody. There's no drugs in the facility. I know you find it hard to believe. It's the truth. I can't make it up when I bring people in here.
Are there women here?
Yes.
Okay. So women, this is a co-ed facility.
Yeah. But
gender-separated apartments?
Yes, of course.
Okay.
We work together, and that's important because here's the thing that people don't understand. In most treatment facilities, I'm a drug addict and I got there on Tuesday. Who do I get to visit on Sunday? My significant other, the same person I was getting high with. Here, there's no dating while you're a student here. I have many couples that are now married that are graduates. But
married to each other?
Yes.
Or they met here?
Yes. But they didn't date while they were here. They had to wait till after they graduated because you've got to get your life together first.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you just have a drug addict dating another drug addict.
So you also require them to cut off contact with their families?
No.
Okay. Are they able to get visitors? Are they able to make phone calls?
Once you've been here for 30 days, you can start writing home to the people who raised you. Once you've been here for 90 days, you can start calling home to the people that raised you, and at a year, you can have your first visit.
Meaning your parents?
Yeah, but here's the thing.
So no kids, no significant others?
If you don't, nobody has kids here.
Okay.
If you've been arrested 25 times, you don't have kids. They were already taken from you.
So who's their support network when they get out then? It's this community
It's
still?
this community and their families. So many of them rebuilt the relationships with their families.
But their parents or siblings?
Yes, but you got to remember, here's the thing, half the students here got high with their parents.
Wow.
And if they didn't get high with their parents, they enabled them almost into their grave.
Another big differentiator that makes the Other Side Academy particularly appealing to reformers is that it's free to participants.
And we take no money from the government. We have social enterprises that generate our revenue. But when you're brand new, you stay on property. Sweep, mop, kitchen, laundry. As we get a chance to know you, because most of them are coming from jail and prison. So they're not coming here because they're singing too loud in the church choir. They've got behavior issues that need to be addressed. So we get a chance to know you for the first 3 or 4 months. Then we decide, are you going to go on the construction? Are you going to go to the thrift boutique? Are you going to the moving company?
Are they getting paid?
No, they're not getting paid. It's an internship.
Okay. It's all going back into the property.
That's right. The important thing is this. This population doesn't know how to work. If they did, that's where they'd be. We know how to get high and go to jail, get high and go to jail. We don't know how to work. And what I mean by that is get up, go to work, be on time. Go to break, come back on time. Go to lunch, come back on time. Afternoon break, come back on time. Follow simple instructions. Punch out at 5, right? Go home, rinse and repeat.
Housing First has sort of required that you not force people to be sober in order. Like that's been part of the requirement to get government funding, right?
Yeah.
So would you like to see that loosened to where sober living communities could access federal funding?
We won't do it here because if the government knew how to solve this problem, they wouldn't have created it. When you think about what's happening right now.
You don't want state money, you don't want federal money.
Because then they're going to tell us how to do it.
What percentage of people come in here and actually don't make it all the way through the process?
51% of the people who start will leave. So half the people that start will finish.
But how can this be a success then if like half the people aren't even going to stick around?
Julie, it's 30 months long. That's a higher success rate than 30, 60, or 90-day models. If you can keep half the people who start in a 30-month program, that's a huge success.
DeRocher says those who stay 30 months or longer at the Other Side Academy have at least a 75% chance of remaining drug-free, crime-free, and employed. It is an impressive result, but it comes with a huge caveat as a model for addressing homelessness.
If you have an untreated mental illness that requires medication, then this won't be the place because we're not a medical facility. So we decided we're going to start the tiny home village called the Other Side Village for our chronically homeless brothers and sisters that have severe mental health issues. We have 38 acres of land. We've got 40 homes on foundations now on the west side. About 20 of them are occupied by our chronically homeless brothers and sisters.
And how's it different than what's happening here?
Much softer approach. Much softer because it's people that have mental health issues, physical disabilities, and things like that. It is absolutely astonishing what we've done. They're already living in the tiny homes. No drug use, no alcohol use. You've got to go visit the village. You haven't been there yet?
Not yet.
You're going to see something. It's going to blow your mind. And you're going to go, why the heck aren't we doing this all over the place?
So that was Dave DeRocher, the ever-confident and enthusiastic executive director of the Other Side Academy in Salt Lake City. I did actually head straight to the Other Side Village from his office.
Your destination is on the right.
It's in an industrial area next to a major highway and looks like a miniature suburb of tiny homes plopped down amid the warehouses. It was hot and dusty the afternoon I stopped by, and the place seemed deserted.
Hello? Hey, are you a staff person here?
But I ducked into a building that had the look of a clubhouse, and I lucked out.
Gosh, this is a nice room. Would you be able to give me a quick tour?
Of course. My name's Robbie Myrick. I'm the director of the Human First Culture, so I oversee the entire coach team for the village.
Are you also an Other Side Academy former
I'm an
graduate?
Academy graduate. Yeah, I spent 4 years of my life there. And then 3 years ago, I graduated, and I got the chance to come help start the village. So I experienced homelessness as a child and as an adult. And so I have a mom who's out there homeless, a brother who is out there homeless. He actually recently just got accepted into the village, and a sister. So my entire family's out there struggling. So I thought, you know what, if there's something that's going to help them, I'd love to be a part of it.
The Other Side Village is effectively permanent supportive housing like we heard about earlier. Residents sign a lease, pay rent, and commit to abide by community rules. One big difference is they have to be clean and sober first. The other is the prep school.
So before you can move in here, you have to graduate from the prep school.
It's in a renovated building across from the Other Side Academy's main campus downtown. Participants are recruited by village outreach workers right off the street in a lot of cases. They go to a detox facility first if they need, and then they move into the prep school dormitory.
The prep school is 6 months to a year. You saw the academy. It's a little baby version of the academy. And you're learning how to be accountable, how to get up and go to work, how to have challenging conversations. A lot of people are working on different things, but you're getting your foundation.
Are you getting treatment for your mental illness?
Yes. So we partner with outside services for if they need medication, if they need to see a therapist. But we believe the community is the best therapy that you can find, and often it is. So you take people and you put them surrounded by support where they're held to a standard, but they're also supported to achieving it. You know, a lot of people said we would never be able to get people to work. But when people go and work from day one in the prep school, they can't wait to get out there and go work the next day.
What are they doing in the prep school for work?
So we have social enterprises similar to the academy. We have a donut shop. We have another one called the Other Side Foods. And we are going to have multiple social enterprises here at the village. There's going to be a 25-home cottage style where you'll come and be able to rent them out, and that'll generate revenue.
Airbnb kind of thing?
Yep, similar to that. There's going to be an amphitheater. There's going to be a grocery store, a coffee shop. That's to separate stigma. We don't want people to think those homeless people live over there. This is going to be like downtown Disneyland. So people are going to come to experience the amphitheater, the grocery stores. We're on the west side. They don't have a lot of things like that. So we hope it's a booming space for the community to experience it. And then the homes will be over here behind the gate, private.
As prep school participants get close to graduating, they start getting paid for their work.
They come to the village their last 6 weeks in the prep school. They save up that money so they have day one of their rent paid. And all 100% of our graduates have graduated the prep school with a job. And I think it speaks something to most of our people none of them had a job when they got there. 100% of our graduates had a job upon graduating and are still working.
A lot of them. I did drive by the donut shop, so okay.
Yeah.
It's just around the corner and painted bright pink and yellow, so it's hard to miss. Just as Myrick and I were heading out of the clubhouse to go look at one of the tiny homes, a resident named Jennifer rushed in from her shift at the Other Side Donuts.
We moved in on, was it New Year's Day?
What brought you to the Other Side Village?
I really needed an opportunity and people to give me an opportunity to completely reinvent myself, start over. I thought that I had completely destroyed my life.
Is that because of addiction that you'd experienced before?
Yes, and life circumstances, poor choices and outside choices as well. And you could say that phase one of my life I did a good job ruining, but they've given me an opportunity to really start over and supported me through health concerns. They're helping me rebuild, a career. I'm a manager over at the donut shop. I'm a community leader here. So, they're giving me these opportunities that I didn't think people would trust me or respect me enough to give me again.
As Jennifer and I spoke, Robbie Myrick led us to an empty home that's waiting for its new owner.
Oh, wow, look at this place. So it comes furnished.
Comes furnished, heating, air conditioner.
Yeah, you've got the little sitting area.
Yeah, you get
TV.
There is a full pantry when you move in. The pantry's stocked,
Really?
and so you can check it out.
Okay, yeah, a little kitchen, a bathroom, queen bed, whatever that is. It's so cute.
The contrast to what I'd seen over at the Magnolia was startling. I felt like I was walking into one of those little showroom spaces at IKEA.
What's the square footage of these?
I believe they're 380 to 400.
Will you have couples?
So you have to apply to the prep school single, but if relationships start when they're in the village, that's perfectly fine.
And then what about families?
Nope, single men and women. The kids thing comes with a different challenge. There may come a day people become pregnant, and we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But
there is a literal bridge that residents cross when they arrive at the village. It's symbolic of crossing into a new phase of life. And there's also a bell next to the clubhouse they ring as part of the ceremony.
Can I ring it real quick?
It's loud.
All right. Oh my gosh. You're right. That's louder than I expected. You warned me.
That's a lot.
Yeah. And do you have 24-hour security? Eventually it'll be a gated community.
We do have security. Staff live on site, but the best part is that it doesn't have to be staff that police the neighborhood. The people that went through the prep school are the ones. We say the faith of this, or the future of this community, is wrapped up in one moment. So when somebody comes in here and your next door neighbor, they crumple up a Coke can and they throw it on the ground next to you, are you going to be the type of person that walks up and says, hey, we don't do that here? Or are you going to walk past the litter? Because most places, the people aren't speaking up. When we got this building, we were talking about how are we going to keep it clean, and so who are we going to hire to come in here and take care of this building? And the community was appalled. They said, that's our building. We're going to take care of it. So they made a list of who's going to rotate and come in here and clean it and take care of it. And they have 100% ownership of everything.
Are there like cleanliness checks in the?
Yeah. There's standards that you can't hoard. There's certain, it needs to be presentable. The neighbors are the ones that go through and
The neighbors go through and check each other's home.
Yeah. They elect somebody who's there's a culture captain who is responsible for checking on new people when they get here if they're going through something, because that community element needs to be up and running. And so every single bit of it has been amazing to see the ownership and how the finished product has turned out.
Robbie Myrick oversees coaching and community culture at the Other Side Village. Right now, Utah officials are revising the state's strategic plan to address homelessness. And Housing First will almost certainly play a smaller part than it has in the past. President Trump is shifting federal resources away from Housing First policies, and he signed an executive order that would make it easier for states and cities to remove outdoor encampments and to get people into mental health or addiction treatment, even against their will. When we started working on this episode, I was braced for a lot of antagonism between the sides for and against Housing First. That has certainly been the tone in many local news stories. But instead, I just kept hearing a lot of people say, this is complicated and there is no one right answer, so we have to keep working together on it. I found that really inspiring. It's got me believing that there may still be room for Utah to lead out again on solving homelessness. I'd love to hear what's on your mind after listening to this episode. What do you think should be expected of someone who's been homeless after they get housing? What should a community be willing to offer those individuals? Send an email to topofmind@byu.edu. Let's keep the conversation going. Top of Mind is a BYU radio podcast. Today's episode was produced by Isabella Sosa, Teo Wolf, and me, with help from Samuel Benson and Sam Payne. Our audio engineers on this episode were Lauren Sandberg and DJ Cromarty. I'm Julie Rose. We'll talk soon.